announce, and I'm happy to announce right now Aguinaldo Dos Santos, a very old friend for nearly 20 years, if not longer, from Brazil. And I think it's fair to introduce Aguinaldo as one of the pioneers of sustainabilities, a very passionate pioneers of sustainabilities. And I think you are witnessing sustainability for around 30 years, and with all the changes that came along for sustainability in this time. You have a PhD in built environment. You did your postdoc in Polemy. You're a resident of Brazil and a passionate Brazilian, but you're traveling a lot, and through this connecting the worldviews and the activities from the global south to the global north, from the east to the west, you're quite often in China as well. And we have a long partnership, and Aguinaldo invited me for 1.5 years ago to come to Curitiba. So this was a nice moment to meet again, where I did a project on food systems, and I was very impressed about what's going on in Curitiba. Yes, so there's much more to say about you, but we have this wonderful little character cards also on the Miro where you can connect to your LinkedIn or whatever. So just that we get to know each other a little bit better. Hi, Sophia. And but now, Aguinaldo, the stage would be yours to share your thoughts about today's topic.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. 1 second.
You are allowed, yes.
Yes, let's see, code sharing, and now, okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Well, the way I structured the presentation, Philip, was basically trying to provide insights for our joint project, okay? So these reflections are more insights into ideas, what could you do to the project? And I emphasize here education, okay? I know we are talking about food first, but I see very much a central issue is educate, particularly the next generation, and particularly kids, how to educate kids in a new way of connecting to the environment and using forests as a way, as a education open labs. So I would basically go through some concepts from forest schools to, to digital twins, to beehives, of many different perspectives. Some of them are from Brazil. I would say most of them are from Brazil, and some of them come from other countries around the world. So where I came from right now, well, I'm from Curitiba, which is a small city when you compare to other places of the world. It's 1.8 million inhabitants. But we are very good regarding the environment comparing to other cities in Brazil. We have 68 square meters of green area per inhabitant. This is really good when you compare to the UN, which established 12 square meters of green space per capita. So this is a good city to talk about forest and forest as an environmental space for education. I would start first with the concept, which I find could be very interesting for our project, Philip, which is the concept of forest schools. I know that you have that in Germany, but the connection between forest and education is growing around the world. The interest, the research on this. This is one of our PhD students in my university. She evaluated the growth of research on this. It's been really going increasingly more, receiving increasingly more attention. Most of studies they focus on the impact of natural space on mental health and things like this, from a health perspective. But there is a growing number of papers studying the use of forest as open classrooms or learning spaces. That's one of the things I'm going to talk here. But first, I start in Annie Miller from Denmark. She knows very much about this because Denmark is one of the countries that has more longer experience on forest schools, particularly from the 50s. The idea of forest schools as a space where kids could learn different skills, different from being more socialized and more being more resilient, more confident, and more creative learners. And the idea of forest schools as a place for kids getting new relationships, not just with other humans, but also with natural world. So there is lots of guides around the world on how to convert forests into forest schools. So take the example of Denmark. In Denmark, and I'm not going even to try to speak this word here, but these forest kindergartens that very much are focused on early childhood. It is very much I did a project some time ago in Denmark in Bornholm, and I had the opportunity of visiting one of these forest kindergartens. It's a really it's something that could be useful to consider on our project because it really can provide a framework, a structure to engage the local community on the forest. And in the case of Denmark, this is very much focused on the Nordic philosophy of that's very much bringing kids to learn, for example, how to make a shelter, how to make a fire. So this this can bring a totally new connection for us on the long term. You need to engage kids for us in order to have adults that can have a different connection from natural world. So and yeah, it can be fun, of course, climbing trees, looking for butterflies, and so on, building caves and and having listening to fairy tales. In Britain, for example, there is even some policies and some programs from the government trying to implement this in a larger scale. For example, the naturally friendly school or the pupil referral units. Uh, so, particularly in areas where kids have not so much access to green space, so these government programs trying to make more equitable access. And but then in Britain, they have the same strategy, which is very much focused on after school care or engaging outdoor after school activities and so on. There is a network of institutions in UK. In the case of Brazil, there is a little bit difference regarding the approach. It's very much a blend between European outdoor pedagogy and these indigenous and riverine traditions, are very much mixing this um, traditional knowledge of indigenous community and conventional pedagogical approach. So sensory reconnection and people learning how to in the case of indigenous people, this is their life. Their every day there, it is a living classroom. So many, particularly private schools in Brazil and schools that are often from richer people, they are bringing this as a model of teaching that is bringing more and more attention for. But there is also a growing number of indigenous community in Brazil that are implementing this as a formal village or forest school. For example, here, Aldeia Escola Floresta is an indigenous community in Brazil that is bringing many different issues: music, rituals, cosmological issues, reforestation, recovery of springs, art, film, workshops in this community to convert the entire everyday life of the community in an open learning space in the forest. There is some initiatives in Brazil, for example, the Cuicuri School in Xingu, Brazil, which is one of the largest indigenous community. They are implementing this forest school. In this forest school, they are bringing promoting the traditional knowledge regarding the connection of indigenous people and nature as a formal school, which is recognized by the state as a formal school, a forest school approved by the government. So in my university, we do have a forest school initiative. It started in 2009. So it has two main strategies. One is forest is a school where academics receive public from educational institutions, and forest to school, where the academics go to schools and teach about soil, water, plants, and so on. In my university, they have inside of the university, the forest trail, which is basically some trails in the forest when they teach about medicine, about water, soil, and then they do theater, they do workshops of material, fresh materials from the forest, and creativity workshops and so on. So here's some image of the project in my university, which converts one of the lands of my university into open space for learning, and from theater to drawing, many different activities. And this is a ongoing project. This, is already almost 15 years. So imagine I use then AI just to provoke you, Philip, seeing what would be the project using this approach. For example, at Spicewald, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly,
That's
Spicewald Sud
perfect.
project.
Yeah.
Uh, what would be? Could we connect this with a local forest school, and then bringing another layer, another partner on this? And in Oxford, last year, no, so last year they have this modern human story making. So one of the activities that some places around the world are doing is feral walking and modern human storytelling, which is a very different way of doing a normal guided tour. In this case here, students are assigned a forest partner, for example, mouse, or even using a digital sensor, and they trying to walk with this entity using macro photography and sensors to document the world and making a new story. So that's one very interesting way of using forests. In my city, many cities around the world have this, but in my city we have this garden of sensations, which often bring children from local schools to have sensations using touch, smell, and other human sense to feel the plants, feel the forest, and feel to touch and reconnect this, because in the human environment we are losing this more and more. So this is a strategy to reduce, to increase the connection of the forest. So could have this of this Spice World, some like kind of trail of sensations of Spice World project, you know. Uh, in my city, also a very interesting project, which one of my colleagues is a major leader, is the Centro de Ilustração Botânica do Paraná, which means the Botanic Illustration Center of Paraná, which is based on the botanical garden of my city. So they have an open workshop, which are free, so people can do illustrations directing the eye towards nature, and they do that in a everyday, and they do exhibitions and so on. That could be a very interesting way to reconnecting people, local people, to the forest. So could have this in Spice World Sud project, like a botanic illustration community or a center, I don't know. In my city, Curitiba, we do have now, we just opened, Philip, remember that last time you came to Curitiba, they are designing the new urban farm of Curitiba.
Yes.
Now
Yes.
it's implemented now. You see the image there. It's a much bigger. And so there in this urban farm, they have this unconventional food plants. Many of them come from the forests, and they have regular workshops on teaching people how how to prepare dishes and so on of these unconventional food plants we call punks. Uh, anyway, it could have an edible lab, for example, for the project. So you could have like a pop-up edible lab for the Spice World Sud project. That could be very interesting. Another insight for the project, in many communities in Brazil, like indigenous communities or quilombo communities, which are from the former slaves, they have these communities called quilombos. They have tours about medical plants, plants that actually can cure many illness. And many of these communities, they do community-based tourism using these plants a tour. So, and I'm sure that in Germany, as any other place, there are so much of this herbal medicine that could be one way to reconnect people to the forest and bring their interest on protecting the forest and so on. Now, and quite likely Germany have this already mapped that, but this could be, creating a pathway, a trail on herbal medicines. Bird watching, of course, it's something that works very well. For us in my university, we do have a tower for bird watching, very tall tower. It is already nowadays you have to, it's not so open anymore because there is some people jumping from the from the from the bird watching tower. But now university have to put some locker there, and then they have to book to go there. But anyway. Bird watching is something that works very well to reconnect. When I studied in Britain, first time I went to a bird watching house, I was amazed by the books of so many people taking notes of the birds they see throughout the years of, and that's in Brazil. That's not so common. We have so many birds around, but that could be not just bird, but insects or other, could be something very interesting and very viable to connect people. If you make it fun, or if you make it somewhere people can really see the birds closely. So could have a bird watching station in the spice world. Maybe that could be an interesting thing. In São Paulo University, they have done in Brazil. They have done some games for students where they use digital twins of forests, Amazon forest, so kids could play a game mixing reality and digital world, and then games is something that kids are very very interested nowadays. So you could use this to for them to see lives that are invisible to the naked eye. So that be is something very interesting. This game here that is open. You can download this game on the internet. The link is upstairs, up there on the up on the slide. You can download it and play it in your own computer. But that could be an interesting thing for the project. Of course, there is all this virtual reality, augmented reality, and all these new interactions with the real world. In the Museum of Modern Art in Brazil, they did in 2024 open air exhibitions on realities and simulacra, realidades and simulacros, where they bring different artists to integrate art, virtual art, in the forest and in the outside of the museum. That could be something interesting for the Spice World project to integrate information on the forest that are not possible to see a naked eye or be too complex, converting this into an open environment for learning, digital learning. The idea of digital learning is also very interesting. Nowadays, I see when you talk to the marketing people, they are using digital twins a lot to many different, mostly to analyze the viability of products and services. But that is already being used for forests. Producing these digital twins. Normally, they do that for forestry management, to plan the cutting of the forest and so on. But that could be very useful for teaching. You do a digital twin of the Spiceworld forest, and then you could, for example, you could bring kids to think about what would be an implication for cutting a tree in terms of carbon footprint and so on. Having a digital twin would be an interesting way to engage people. One interesting project that I see that we don't have this. I never saw this in Curitiba, but I think it is very interesting is the idea of sentinel seedling. Perhaps one of the best examples are from the NASA Artemis mission, where they brought these seeds from the space. So schools around the world, they plant the seed and they monitor the growth these trees, and they share this knowledge with other schools around the world. So it's more or less like a open experiment where kids are sharing their learning from a seed that was out of space. Could have a seed out of space planted in spice world? Maybe that could be a way to bring in more interest to people for the forest. And I'm gonna bring another approach here, which I started to investigate this in the past 4 years, more or less. Some people call this ecological macroscoping or real-time data grids. Basically, it's converting the forest into a smart lab, a smart city, or a smart forest. So you can use that for example, see the impact of rainstorm and see CO2 levels and so on, all in real time. So what you see here on the right, in the photo here, is myself and an indigenous chief installing an IoT into system into a forest. In this case here, it's to monitor beehives around a forest. So we are monitoring their humidity, um, temperature, the weight of the bees, and many other issues. So in this case here, just giving is an example, the community here is Quaraiaxá community. You see right here in the middle of the screen. This Quaraiaxá community is in the middle of nowhere. No, when I mean nowhere, in fact, it's in the middle of everywhere because it's a huge forest around. Probably, I don't know, probably could be the size of, I don't know, 1/3 of Germany. Uh, so I work a lot with this community, and there in this community, we implemented there a group of beehives, stingless beehives. Brazil have 400 different species of stingless beehives. They don't bite you. They are harmless. So for this indigenous community, their beehives are sacred. They use their wax for in religious ceremonies and so on. Uh, and so we implement this, and here is indigenous chief installing the radar. So this radar, they monitor the speed of the amount of bees flying around, and there is the in the bottom here is IoT for measuring weight and so on. We implemented sensors to measure temperature, humidity, and so on. Here is the bees. They of course they put a lot of wax around this, and here we're implementing. And we ask the kids to give names for each beehive. So the kids they paint it and give. So we implement the names. So each kid has their own beehive, and then through this, in partnership with Brunminder is a French American company. They have this modular system to implement to monitor beehives. We can then monitor temperature, weight, and so many other variables. So what we did, we produce. We saw that in France they are using that to produce dashboards of like live beehive dashboards, so kids can see in real time the state of an environment using the beehive as a way to monitor the key indicators for the environment. So we decided to use the same idea, but then bringing that to the indigenous people. We produced an ebook not in Portuguese, but in the indigenous language. I cannot even read this because it's in Guarani, the indigenous language. And then on this book, we integrate the data from the IoT. So in real time, the ebook can bring to indigenous kids, indigenous students, data they can use for mathematics, geography, biology, and other things that are collected inside of their own community. So the ebook telling a story and connecting using data from their own community so they can use that for mathematics and other things. So another project we did connecting also with bees, we call urban beehives project. We are focused very much on this project on digital fabrication, open design, and education. So we co-design the beehives with kids from a local school, and then we implement this. This is a beehive. Inside is very complex, okay, but from the outside, we had to design something that the kids could understand what was inside. So from outside is so they even painted the kids painted the beehive using these wax things that you can paint using wax, colored wax. And you see here in the screen these little bees here. They are bees. They are not mosquitoes. They are bees, and they already installed in the beehive. Even in the winter, the kids even produce some clothing for the for the beehive. So here you see in the left screen the process of printing the beehive, and and then we produced some copyleft ebook, uh, co-designed and co-written with school kids and bee experts. We took the best bee experts. Sorry, it's written wrongly there. Best bee experts in the state of Paraná and kids. So we asked many questions. We put the answer from the kids and the answer from the expert in the same page. What the kid uh, understand about the environment, what the idea of how to answer this question, and how the expert answer this question. This book is open, and then we implement many uh, uh, visits of students or exhibitions and so on, where you see on the top here, right, they have like a passport for Melipolandia. Melipolandia is a fictional country that we invented. Is the country of the stingless bees. Meliponas are the bees that have no, they cannot sting, bite you. So they have stamps from this fictional country. So they are official ambassadors for the bees, and they have this diploma, the certificate saying that they are now ambassadors for the protectors of the beehives. So was really fun. And then we continue to do that many for example, in the undergrad we do many workshops and disciplines on post anthropocentric design, where students design solutions for modern humans or biocentric design. For example, lonely beehives, students are designing, for example, bee hotels for lonely bees and so on. In my city, this is quite strong. We have, for example, in public parks, we have what you call Jardins do Mel, or in English, honey gardens, which are anyone can see there, anyone can visit there. They are in all public parks, and all public schools, all primary schools in my city, they all have stingless beehives. This is part of the curricula in the schools. Students can learn from this. So I'm presenting this because I see beehives. You see, until 2017, I have no idea. I'm being very honest. I have no idea that Brazil has stingless beehives. In fact, I didn't even know that there was bees that have no stings. For me, all bees could bite you, and I stay away from bees. But in 2017, we did a pilot project. Then I learned this, and now I even become what you call in Portuguese a meliponicultor. Someone I have many stingless beehives in my country house here. Philip, last time he was in Brazil, he saw this. Now, so these are some insights I like to bring to the project. I list some of them here. For example, this partnership with forest schools, or a forest trail, or modern human storytelling activity, or gardening of sensations, a botanic illustration, open atelier, edible lab, maybe a pop-up edible lab, a medicinal or herbal medicinal tour trail, a bird watching house or bird watching tower, using augmented reality, the Spicewald Sud Forest digital twin, why not? A Sentinel seedling, maybe a partnership of NASA, why not? A smart forest or grid, maybe. or lonely bee hotels. Every time someone come to my house, I offer them, if they want to. I give them lonely bee hotel. So not many people can afford to give a hotel to a friend, but I give hotels to my friends. It's fun. So this was some insights, Philip. I don't know. I went a bit quickly, but I want. You told me that you want to speak about the call, so I think that could be give some space for. So I'm open now to. This was. Remember, my friend, I'm in my holidays, so and I just brought some ideas. Yeah, I produced that just as a way to give insights for the project. But I'm open. It'd be great to discuss this if you have any questions. So.
Of course. I mean, first of all, thank you very much. I feel very privileged that at the other end of the world, you are sitting and sort of empathizing with the project that we're having. And I think that's very helpful for us, Carla, as well. Carla is from Brazil, UFPR, and she's spending a 3-month research time in Cologne. And I think there are a lot of super important aspects. And I think it's really, I hope, but I'm sure it's valuable also for other people and other perspectives, because you showed a lot of examples that are sort of really important to sort of bring together different aspects, not only in one place, but also different from different sites. So, for example, the seeds do not necessarily need to fly to the moon. The seeds could come from similar climate zones all around the globe or from different climate zones, whatever. So we can dive deeper into that. What struck me most was one approach we already discussed at an earlier time was also the notion of education and education. I mean, we're all working in education, but we understand nowadays that for the future challenges, we need to go upstream, and upstream means kindergarten or primary school. And I think the thoughts that you brought to, on the one hand, have the forest or whatever it is. It could be a forest, a garden, a community garden, whatever place in the school on the one hand, but also as a school on the other hand is super interesting as well. So I have a lot of comments, but maybe there are more comments from other people as well, and then we can go a bit deeper. No?
So good. You see, I'm getting old. I'm becoming more and more clear. More and more good on talking. No questions. So good the presentation.
Well, I mean, there is a lot of inspirations, and thank you also for creating this evidence through the use of AI or whatever. I mean, to show that. I would love to see an overlap of all of them. Then there's no space any anymore. And at least from my side, I mean, you've been addressing, as said, a lot of aspects. I mean, traveling a lot and working in different places where indigenous people and expertise is very relevant. I'm asking all the time, what would that be for Germany? Some people told me, well, you are indigenous in German. Well, I am somehow, but it's more or less also the knowledge and the expertise of the older people, the elder sort of generation in terms of recipes, in terms of, I mean, you're talking about medicine. I mean, what are toxic plants? What can you eat from the plants? So all of this is very, very helpful as well. But Oscar, you raised your hand as well.
Yeah, so Aguinaldo, I really like your presentation. I think it also shows that not because we are working in food forests or different kind of ecological contexts doesn't mean that we can develop specific technologies and explore like the interact and use those technologies to interact with other living beings or other kind of species in this ecosystem that we are trying to work with. I think it's really interesting to look at how, in this case, design or these design tools can actually help us to create new connections, teach, and also learn in a situated manner. And that's something that I really resonate with, because also, like with my background, that's what I would work with. So my background again, so it's not on food, but it's an interaction design. And I think that, and more than human design and situated learning and things like this. And I think that what you presented sounds really, really interesting. So, and also the ideas that you are proposing. So it's more like a comment rather than a question, but thank you for your presentation.
And just like to ask, well, thank you, Oscar. And I have to tell you that in these issues, I'm absolutely beginner, because everything I knew until 2017 is almost useless when you're talking to interacting more than humans or other species and so on. So I'm learning. So I have some PhD students and master students working on this, and I have to confess that for me, when I was a kid, I used to hunt birds. No, I lived by a forest and when I was a kid, and we didn't have video games at that time. And hunting birds for me was a way to eat. No, I eat birds. Okay, so my relationship with the forest was not, romanticized. The forest for me was a source of food, so I used to hunt there. And but one thing that stay in my soul from that time is the connection. I could feel the forest, and I could feel the growth. Even the sounds. For example, when I was a bird hunter, I remember if the sound of something on the trees, I could tell which bird was there just by the sound of the branch, not the sound of the singing, the way it moves on the trees. And most of the kids nowadays in the urban area, they're losing this connection. They lost this connection. Not just the sensations, but the ethical, the logic, and the time of things. When you do something in the forest, it sometimes takes years to see the impact. So I know we are all adults here, but sorry guys, but I don't really have many hopes for the adults. I think I really think that we need to focus on the kids, to the next generation. So Oscar, I myself, although I don't hunt birds anymore, of course, I still many of my behaviors are still very hard to change, and my hopes are for the next generation to have a, and I see really very much to learn from traditional knowledge, from conventional, not just traditional knowledge, even some. So the beginning of this year, I was attending some Buddhist ceremonies there, and they are talking exactly about this new connection from the natural world and so on. Even religion could provide this. But anyway, Campbell, Donald.
Aguinaldo, thank you for your presentation. That was really interesting. I mean, I think that sort of following on from your last comment, I find the reconnection with indigenous knowledge, and with youth, fascinating, and I think that in many ways, being able to kind of weave together sort of these multitudes of knowledge systems is really the way that we need to be approaching the sort of the complex problems that we face at the moment, instead of privileging certain types of knowledge systems. I mean, I think it's fascinating that you said that you didn't even know that there was stingless bees in Brazil until came across that, probably in work with one of these indigenous communities. And I've worked in interesting projects that are looking at, well, how do we learn from the knowledge that's been held in indigenous communities for a really long time and bring that together with, and I think you also, so many of your projects are doing that, showing how we can use IoT to reconnect and to bring existing knowledge systems, and maybe in ways of being able to communicate easier to children in ways that are more accessible. So it's just something I really appreciated in the projects that you showed. And I mean, for me, it was fascinating to see sort of the expanse of the work that you've done in Brazil. And in many ways, the sort of the sophistication of the development of many of those projects. I mean, to have two urban gardens in your institution is wonderful. It took a very, very long time for us to get one set up in Johannesburg, and it's certainly not of the level that your one looks like at all. But anyway, we all got to start somewhere. But yeah, thank you. That was wonderful.
And Angus and Oscar and everyone, you are more than invited to come. You see, it's not heaven. I don't want to, there is, of course, lots of problems here. Felipe was here and he came to Curitiba. So I don't want to paint the thing that everything is beautiful and shiny. But anyway, it would be great if you one day you want to come to Curitiba. Anyway, any of you would like to share what we are doing and so on. But I don't pretend to be everything shiny and beautiful. There is a lot of problems, okay? But we are in the same boat, so we all need to learn. So Philip
Yeah,
was
no,
here.
but
Philip can tell he was here for then doing this discipline. You see that there is some good things, but there are also many problems, Philip.
well, I think you have more pressure to address those problems, but I think you've done that in a very, very impressive, convincing, and holistic and interconnected way. So that's what I think is really interesting, and that's also, I think, what we can learn from. I think the example that you brought in the beginning, sometimes figures are quite interesting. The 80 square meters that you're having per capita, and the United Nations recommend 12. I need to dig deeper into those figures, whether it is an average for a country or for the city or the density, because I just know from Cologne, from the head of the Green Spaces Department, that the European Union has defined a certain figure and correlation, actually, but nobody calculated it down to the cities. Why? Because none of the German cities, just for Germany, the larger cities can cope with that or can address that. So they rather pay the fine than sort of addressing that. But he calculated it for Cologne and said we need to have 4 times the green spaces in the city. Well, of course, you cannot erase the buildings, but you can have rooftops and whatever. And our initiative and other initiatives are pretty much aware that we are doing what the politics have been deciding, but very often not supported by the local politics. And I think,
You
again,
see,
the networks are super helpful for showing what's going on in other places and exchanging around this topic.
you see, there is one thing that happened in Curitiba, which is a healthy competition for other cities around the world. For example, in order to stay ahead, last 2 years, our mayor established the goal of planting 100,000 trees. 100,000 trees in 2 years is finishing now. 100,000 trees. So the manager of the urban forest management, he came to my country house some time ago. He has a PhD on beehives, but he's the manager of the for urban forest of Curitiba. So they are almost finishing now to plant this goal of 100,000 trees in the city. This is not an easy thing to do because you have all the electrical pipes, all the urban infrastructure. When I was a kid, Philip, there was a tradition in Curitiba. Every kid that was born in Curitiba received a tree from the maternity. So, but the city stopped to do that because people are planting trees where they should not plant the trees, places that were not prepared. But that's something I see that these 68 square meters is including private parks, okay,
Mm.
not just public parks. And in Curitiba, there is some tax benefits for private parks.
Yeah, that's highly necessary. And I wish we could have your friend and colleague from Broadminder one day here. I had a wonderful call with him because I think the bees and the beehives are really addressing, I think, and I think Oscar and Donald, you've been mentioning that as well. On one hand, technological devices like sensors, but also using more than human beings as sensors as well and combining that. And I think that is super, super interesting. In the same way, being very beneficial for the bees and beehives as well. For example, using what I know about him, the pollination activities to predict the harvest for the farmers on a large scale, yeah, and to sort of just get an idea of that. And I think this display that we've seen in a school in France is a bit boring, or it's it's like every display, but that's something that I've been talking with him about. How can we make this data a bit more experienceable on the one hand and more engaging, and on the other hand, and just as a reference also for some of the visualizations that you created. I think the experience that I made, I don't know whether somebody else has made a different experience. If you have kids leaving school and going to whichever site connected to what we would call nature or cultivated nature, the least thing that they want to do is to write or to capture. They want to somehow engage. They want to get their hands dirty and they want to work and they don't want to read. So to have this, I think to really focus on this, what does it mean to have this site in the school and the site as a school in both directions? I think that could be something super interesting. As we've been deciding in Cologne to work very closely with a primary school, what is a privilege. I think I would be really interested to also share either in terms of apply or both also in terms of learn from other places, because like you, I believe that we need to start there as early as possible. I don't know,
See,
maybe, yeah.
one, you're talking before about this network of edible forests, but I think one way to do that would be to have this network of forest schools, through the forest schools where kids can share. Imagine a forest school in Germany sharing knowledge of forest school in Curitiba, and then kids sharing the information that they are getting from the forest, and that will be more engaging. I did a meeting of a forest school initiative in Africa where they're using beehives to protect the elephants. What happened every time the elephant tried to go away from that forest, they touched that wire that moved the beehives. And the beehives, the elephants, they don't like the sound of beehives in their ears, so they go back to the forest. So they don't go into the farmers. So the beehives are protecting the elephants and protecting the forest. So in that case, the local school, although this is not, they are not really aggressive African bees. So, but these kids are now able to interact with the bees without getting closer. So we are talking about connecting that school there in Africa of a school here in Brazil through the beehive. So they could
Mhm.
share data and so on, so on. That's something could be done.
Yeah, I think that for sure would be a super interesting aspect. Is any of you working with bees and beehives? Just asking in the round.
Yeah, we had a wonderful project in South Africa in Johannesburg, developing a beehive. It was a very interesting project with a student who developed, instead of designing the hive, designed the mold to produce the hive itself, and that could then be shipped around the world. And it was a very insulating beehive design. So he followed a human and bee-centered design process, to
Hmm.
develop the hive, working with experts and sort of emerging farmers. But yeah, the impact of the design was that because it was insulating, it improved honey production by about 40%, which was a huge improvement. And ultimately, for many of the urban farmers in Johannesburg, it had a significant impact on improving their crop productivity, but also as an additional stream of income.
Hmm.
Because sort of one honey hive, is almost as much as somebody would earn in an entire month. So yeah, we had to navigate. Interesting, like Aguinaldo said, we had to navigate theft. Was a big
Hmm.
problem of beehives in Johannesburg. So this hive was one that was lockable. And fire was also an issue that we had to navigate a lot. So yeah, the project is still ongoing as a business in South Africa at the moment. But so that's almost 12 years that it's been ongoing.
Hmm.
It was a wonderful project. Yeah.
Yeah, theft is an issue. I mean, I think in Germany or in some European countries, it would be bureaucracy in terms of the danger of beehives, but the stingless bees is something that might be helpful. I know that I don't know any primary school with beehives. It's more like more sort of more elderly and then always protected and gated.
Mm.
Francesca, How about Shanghai?
Um, so, well, this is fascinating. So I met like a couple of months ago. I had no idea about this happening, but apparently there is a urban Shanghai beehive association that is run by an Italian guy that got an apiculture license and professional training in Germany
Hmm.
because he was living there for a very long time. And this has been running for like 15 years. So it's a long thing that somehow went out of my radar. And so the things that they do is basically training in schools. So there is all of this like big business of international schools in
Hmm.
Shanghai, and they work. Of course, they can be supported by them, and so this brings a series of income and stuff. But they also have quite of a few interesting things. For example, one of the places where now they have the beehive where they do the training is kind of a weird sort of a state-owned agricultural farm where there is also a couple of greenhouses where they do plants that they send into space. So there is one part that is actually under the management of the aerospace thing, and they're using the bees to pollinate the seed. Like there's some kind of strange environment, like connection at different level of research. But the interesting part of the story is that, of course, I started to do my training as well. So I'm technically a young uh, beekeeper so far. Try to figure it out how it works, and we are we are setting up a project because the association knows very well how the legislation works here. So we're trying to kick off an installation of a move of the bees into the school, possibly by late spring at the latest. And so to have the beehive, because we have a series of garden and other animal things going on, and we have the janitor support, and so we're trying to have like a collaboration between all of the stakeholder of the school to have a beehive introduced in Tonji, and this would serve potentially also studio practice where a student can work on this from very very different perspective, because there could be like a management, there is an ecology thing. The amazing thing is that this person that ran the association also not only developed a smart beehive. So we were discussing about how this smart beehive project would be like connected with the Fab Lab, which is I think also something that Aguinaldo also mentioned earlier, like how much like fabrication, open source dynamics can support the fact that there's the tools of different kind can go into the um, like into different stream of implementation, but he wants to do a PhD. So we're kind of discussing how is that possible, and the idea would be to do a PhD on how, starting from the smart beehive, then there could be a series of development of artifact that has one part that is fabricated and one part that is digital. I like the words more than human sensor that someone mentioned earlier. And so how this can become on one side a tool for civic engagement at the citizen level, and on the other side entrepreneurship or micro entrepreneurship dynamic of some sort, which I think is a very interesting design research for a PhD, I would say. So if everything goes well, maybe in 6 months from now, I can actually give you a little bit more of context about how this all goes. We did a few things in the past. So I have a couple of, I have like around maybe like 5 to 7 projects that were specifically on pollinator of different kind that looks into what's the data connected from the government, so data visualization, data science project, but also prototypes for installation in the urban environment. And also we had a case in one of the projects that we did with the last Horizon Europe and Ministry of Science and Technology. There was one of our pilot sites. There is actually a wild beehive of Chinese bees, with apparently have some special characteristics, and there was like a big quarrel between neighbors because there is a community place, And there was like basically an internal fight between parents that want to keep the bees because they are amazing for all the reasons that we can name, and parents that want to kill the bees because they are dangerous for all the reasons that they can name. And so we try to use this agonist like occasion to see how the more than human intervention could bring could be could make something happen in the community that is not having a quarrel and then decide who's winning the quarrel, but try to understand from a different perspective what is the role of there and which kind of interaction are possible, or which kind of environmental intervention must be necessary. So then both of the parties are happy, and the bees doesn't have to be killed ultimately. And so far, they're still there, not necessarily because of us, but we were part of this conversation. So there is a lot of there's a lot of things happening. I was wondering by like hearing all of the reflection and the content on what is the like. I do understand the the feeling of like the let's go to the kids kind of thing, and like the forest school as a place like kind of like a more younger age education. At the same time, I also experienced the fact that here, at least in the context that I see, there's no, it's very, and I'm connected with a lot of wild education association and groups, and it's very hard to have an idea of education that is separate, that kind of like, not that it does separate the generation, but that somehow gives to the younger generation enough autonomy and independence so then kids can just thrive by themselves in the context. So for me, the position is actually quite the opposite. It's like, how can you have something that can be transgenerational? So the parents, for once, are not doing only something that serve the kids, but they feel engaged themselves. Because if that's not happening, then it would be very competitive. Like, I don't know, I send my kids to, I don't know, study piano or AI or whatever it is because they will become excellent, but it doesn't create any systemic change or doesn't create any systemic relationship by which there is a collective thriving, which I think is ultimately what we're aiming to have as a framework in a, let's say, like in this circle of people, I would imagine. And so it's very hard for me to disconnect the idea that the focus must be on that thing, because I think for me, one of the struggle is like how I can phrase the relationship, like intergeneration relationship, so then it's not kind of like the old generation serving the younger generation until they must do so, until the moment where the thing is whooped. And so it's the younger generation serving the older generation because they must do so, but something that is more organically growing, like something that has an ecological thinking in the society. And this is this is challenging, because I have to say that when you bring people of all kind to be exposed to nature, there is a concept of safety that is totally new, that needs to be imagined or designed or storytold or whatever. And the idea of safety, it's very, very different and very subjective. So sitting on the grass is considered unsafe, like dirty as unsafe for the majority of people that I work with. And I know that it may sound strange, but because we are in a group of people with like six continents on our shoulder, um, maybe there's something like, I mean, maybe these elements are also part of the conversation. I don't know. It's not really very like clear, straight proposition, but a few things that come in my mind. And I'm happy to share if it's of any use. I'm happy to share. So I've been trying for the past couple of years to get some money from the National Science Foundation, which is like sort of like a fairly big grant for international here in China. And the idea was to like the main idea is like to develop like to have an like a urban ecology lab. So something that it's a living lab, like something that is phrased not across, but picking things from what is a living lab, what it would be a food lab, what is like a forest school a little bit, and it's framed on as based on this idea of government initiative of the ecological civilization, on the fact that you need to create ecological literacy if you want to achieve ecological civilization. You need to have ecological services that are included in the commons, so in the welfare provision that the government does, and so on. And the proposal didn't pass, and I'm trying to understand why. So I'm a little bit confused about why it's not getting there, but maybe it's useful if I share the text with you. It's not very long. So maybe that's something that could serve as a base for people to plug in things, or maybe to have some, to kind of feed a little bit the discourse that we were having, or how we can get money to kind like how can we understand how we have to phrase things so that the money will come in different form or ways. And that's it, because that was too long. I'm sorry.
No, thank you, Francesca, for that. And I took some notes to maybe just to to really sort of reply on that. I mean, concerning the kids, I mean, my hope for the kids is that working with kids in schools, is by its very definition transgenerational. Because the first thing the kids did when they were planting with us, they said, "Can we bring our parents?" And parents and grandparents are around. And in our case, the school is very active. Also, for example, these kids go to the homes for the elderly to read books to them, yeah, because they cannot read any longer because they have bad eyesight, but they have knowledge and expertise. So how can we use this place-based activity where we start with something around food or food forest to bring together the expertise and the curiosity of generations? The next thing that you've been mentioning is civic engagement. And to me, this is really, really important. And this was the second funding that we got here, to use this forest as something to increase civic engagement. Because for me, it's very clear on the long run, this is not a place that is hosted or owned by, in terms of ownership, the university. I want to create something where the ownership is taken over by a group of people. And just a very simple fact that I know in many community gardens or things like that, that if it's run by university, when the students go in holidays, then the things will not strive any longer. Yeah. Or they will even die. For schools, it's easier because in our case, we have the parents, we have the teachers that are quite young, we have the kids working together. So that's really important. And the safety issue goes along with the civic engagement. I mean, how do you teach people about how to experience that? And some of the kids love to touch earthworms, where others said, well, I don't do that. I mean, at least they were all touching soil. When we were in the Scottish Highlands for our winter school with some Chinese students, some need to put on gloves to touch soil because they never did before. And in the end, it might be an urban ecology lab, what is very hard to communicate to the local neighborhood. But I agree, you need to resonate with the local sort of language and funding system. I will put on the Miro also the Green Competence Framework of the European Union, what is quite interesting because it really addresses a lot of things that are deeply embedded in what we're doing. When I was suggesting the Green Competence Framework to another Chinese school to work around that, they immediately said, yes, but we need to bring AI in. So you cannot have all on the same time, but somehow you can address that. I think you need a front door and then you can open up. And I think to jump between those levels might be really good. And no, thank you very much for the comments that you made. I will put some of that on the Miro. But we have right now Nina and then Angus with some comments from Denmark and either South Africa or from Hong Kong. I don't know.
Hi. Yeah, thanks. It's a really short comment, but it's sort of building on Francesca, what you just said about safety, right? And nature connection. And I think, Aguinaldo, is also something that you said about the forest as a source of food, as a source of subsistence, which are very different relationship from the kind of, in a way, I know the conversation is more complex there as well, but nonetheless, in the sort of nature connection community where it is much more romanticized, and where it's like, oh, we need to reconnect with nature, to build these, positive relationships. But nature has also, even if sitting on the grass and that kind of being an issue of safety, we might want to discuss, but in so many parts of the world, you can't sit on the grass just because there are too many insects, or even dangerous animals. And I mean, our Brazilian friends will know this very well. And so I think there is something there that I think is really exciting to explore. So something that I think is really interesting, where, you know, what is that nature connection? What's the quality of the connection? And, is it about like, oh, I love the tree, it's so beautiful, I want to, preserve it, and we need to have more trees, and
Mm.
which I'm now framing as a little bit of a kind of romanticized, not, I mean, I
Yeah.
agree with it, right? But like, nonetheless, there is that sort of positive spin on it, or where it's a relationship, where it's a real lived relationship with all the ups and downs and the dangers and the joys, and a working relationship where we are in nature, because that's where we get our life from, that's how we build, that's where subsistence comes from, where our life making, world making comes from, with the relationship with our habitat, but not necessarily only in this nicey way, where we kind of like, we love it and we protect it over there, but like we bring it in more, really more directly and concretely and dangerously into our lives.
Hmm. Yeah, no, excellent point. That resonates a lot. Good point.
So the comment that I wanted to add is just one of the aspects of the project that we ran in South Africa that's still running at the moment. It was a project looking at food systems change within the Johannesburg environment, particularly in Soweto, which was a former apartheid township, which is surrounded by mine tailings, and it was really trying to bring in as wide a multitude of stakeholders as possible. So we involve government, we had NGOs, we had schools, we had educational knowledge-based institutions, and then we had the local urban farmers, retailers, food retailers, all together in one multiple sets of workshops. Then we identified sort of key opportunities to work on different projects around sort of food in schools, and gardens within school systems. And I think that it's important to write a project, especially around sort of food and cities across a range of stakeholders, as many as possible. And yeah, I mean, even here in Hong Kong, it's fascinating as a city because of the density of the urban environment. But at the same time, there is also significant, more than almost 50% green space that surrounds the city at the same time. And because of the density, your ability, and your and the infrastructure, it's really easy to get into nature. It's quite different to, for example, in Johannesburg, where actually you've got to spend a really long time to get out of this expansive, spread out city space. So yeah, interesting how in different spaces and places the reality of that sort of urban environment is shaped, quite differently, and that's why I think having a multitude of stakeholders understanding issues around sort of politics, policies. I think, like you said, Philip, the sort of the priorities of the EU might be quite significantly different to the priorities in Hong Kong or in Shanghai, and likewise in South Africa. And so then it becomes quite interesting to think about, well, how do we then, what is it that we're looking at if we're trying to bring together a network of people around the world, looking at sort of different urban food spaces, because that could be actually quite special, as opposed to a singular kind of location in one country.
Yeah, I think we here are all aware of the need to look at a site and activity and a process through the lens of different stakeholders, and also to, in the end, to work with concrete sort of people. And I think that's the experience that we're doing. If you come up with such a site, I think the stakeholders in the end are endless. Yeah, because you open up a lot of opportunities, and maybe this goes again back to what Francesca said in terms of the urban ecology lab. I like that term a lot as well, because in the end there is ecological literacy. You need to experience biodiversity to appreciate it. You need to appreciate the quality of plants and food that are not produced industrially. So this is a sort of literacy that we're working on. And I think that the nice thing with such a network is that we have individual initiatives that have certain focus point, but in the end that are different, because there are different sort of local settings, there are different economical settings, there are different sort of cultural settings in terms of the sites, in terms of food, in terms of the relation to nature, in terms of danger. But then to create something quite comprehensive, where either we all or others sort of could learn from. So that would be a bit of sort of my ambition. And here in Cologne, I'm working since 2 years with different faculties. It's social sciences, it's architecture, it's information sciences, and infrastructure and spatial development. And they all look at the same place and the same activity with different lenses and with different sort of research questions that they're having by its very nature. But in the end, if you work with a school, you cannot, it's not a research project then for them, because it needs to be very, very tangible. But on the other hand, I think through what we've seen, and to go back to your presentation, Aguinaldo, we've seen that there are a lot of opportunities to maybe, what I would say, create a backbone as a collaboration with kids and with a school and with the related stakeholders then, and there are many others as well. Being very, very sort of tangible, and then to sort of to echo again this notion of those more than human sensors or sensing devices to get back sort of this literacy in an increased way. So that's what I would expect. So saying that, I think we are still in an academic discourse about the needs that we might agree on, and the opportunities that are very dependent on sort of local fundings. Maybe not so much, and this is encouraging me at Aguinaldo, on our specific expertise, because I think we all learned to unlearn again and to dive deep into different things. So therefore, I think the exchange of experience and expertise here is highly valuable for me as well, because when I'm trying to curate the different experts and expertise around the food forest, I have no expertise in that. So I was super helpful. We couldn't have set it up without Claire, for example, who's here right now, who helped us in very, very concrete steps. But in the end, right now, we are one step further. And I would be happy to have bees as well. So I'm not into beehives. So we're bringing that somehow together. Oh, Aguinaldo, you give us you give us a beautiful view on your more than 68 square meters that you're having as a person. And so maybe just to conclude, I just want to maybe briefly share my screen again to get back on the Miro board that I've been creating. That's a bit more tangible than the Google Doc. And the idea here is, on the one hand, to collect a bit of all the meetings to make it tangible. You always find the videos, but nobody is watching the videos, maybe sometimes. So thank you again, Aguinaldo, for sharing the presentation here. So, and I will put some comments on here and something that has been in the chat. So this could be a source for you as well. I've been collecting a bit here. So, I mean, Florence Eagle from FAO, she was sharing important documents and something general about living labs and so on, but also results of previous Horizon projects that we could refer to. That could be quite interesting. And here I started, but time is limited right now, to collect a bit on possible calls that we can refer to. only the ones that are upcoming and that are clear. So maybe my last question would be, and I checked actually most of the EU portals. So there is one call that is quite close. There needs to be a very short submission in February 26. So is any of you currently working on preparing something like a call? Or if not, I mean, I have time, we know. I mean, I'm thinking in different timescales. If it doesn't work out this year, it will work out next year. We just have to proceed. And I'm not doing it because I want to get funding, but as I'm doing it, I'm looking for funding and also funding and working on a call to get to know each other a bit better and to sharpen the ideas, because today it was quite divergent, and to bring it together for a call, I think might be quite healthy. So my call to action would be, if you would be willing to, if you know any call, just sort of put it there, and then maybe in the next meeting I got already two people asking me, well, if you're talking about the calls, can we please do it next time again? Because I would be interested in. So it's not my core business. And to some of you I talk, that I think that my university is not very good in leading those calls, just in leading consortiums, just because we don't have the infrastructure to do so. What would also mean to sort of deep dive into calls and find the right ones. But I think we have a lot of shared and collective intelligence here right now. And just to be a bit more pragmatic again, if we could sort of unite forces here a little bit as well. If you have something, please share it. And especially I will go a bit deeper into this February sort of deadline. So maybe we can communicate about that as well. Yeah, Claire is back again. Yeah, are there any sort of comments on that from you as well, or suggestions? Because otherwise I would thank Aguinaldo deeply.
I just feedback a little bit. So I know that there is a new. I absolutely haven't looked. I didn't even click into the link, but there was a recent publication of what's going to happen, like 2026, 2027 for European funds on a different track, and I can ask someone from your Axis office to see if they usually do screenings by topic or direction. So I can ask if they have anything that could be useful for us. And then I can ask a person that was involved in, that was like 2023, if I believe it was the latest, well, the last time that Europe had a food related, Nina knows the story because we were involved in that thing, but there is one person from another project, another consortium, that she may be looking into this specific topic. So maybe I can talk to her and see if there is any screening that could be useful for us, and see what's she's usually work as a project manager, so not necessarily specifically on the topic, but kind of like sensible to this topic. But I know that she's doing this work already for herself, so it doesn't cost nothing to just say if there is anything that would be available like soon. 1st of February, of course, is short, but maybe one thing that is worth doing is to, even on an email circle, if people that are interested can look into the call and what's the requirement, we may actually have material from the past that could be good enough to be put together, match or recycle or upcycled for a first round. Because if it's what we got struggle last time is that the first round and second round, you have this very demanding process. So maybe it's easier. Maybe a strategy could be a first round a little bit softer, where we try regardless because the time is short, and if we can upcycle something, why not? And then the effort would be like to look at the call, see what are the requirements, and just have like a little bit of a straightforward sort of decision of who can put some effort in that specific thing. Like as a strategy thing, because then if you put a lot of effort in the first round and then you don't pass for whatever reason, which may be a silly reason or a bureaucratic reason, then is a lot of energy that goes away.
I agree. So that's what I try to do, at least to come up here with the topics and the expected outcomes. So to see what sort of resonates with us. But let's just go back to what you've been suggesting, the urban ecology lab. I mean, what is fitting? Fitting could be soil health, fitting could be didactics, fitting could be biodiversity. It's not necessarily only sort of urban food or food forests or human nature connectedness. I think it's quite a lot of things that can fit. So, but if you have anybody who sort of could sort of use our shared understanding that I see as a filter, it would be super helpful. And so, as said,
Are you okay are you okay? I mean, is everybody okay that I share maybe like a couple of screenshots from the Miro board to this person just to say, hey, these are the things that we're putting together. It's very rough, but
to
is that
me,
reasonable?
this is, yeah, of course, to me, this is even if there are many people I do not know, but all the people know somebody that I do know, and it's somehow a network of trust. And I believe that we try to approach things we cannot approach as individuals or individual institutions. So yes, please. So would be happy to.
Okay.
And Aguinaldo, if we can revitalize our friend, I think Lorenzo, right, from Broadminder.
Yes.
I would be really happy now as I'm a step further to sort of, because I think many of us have been sort of mentioning the bees and beehives, and his passion seems to be something that would be really cool. Maybe we can ask him to share here as well, to give a brief insight, because I think that might be interesting for many of us.
If you want to put in one of the future dates of our
Yeah, that would be great.
monthly meetings, I can invite him. I think you said very gladly. Just tell me when you want it.
Well, yes, we can. We still have some slots available, especially as we share it with two people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always hard to end inspiring conversation, but I promised max 90 minutes. Germany is 2:30, so I didn't have lunch while talking right now because I didn't want to do as a host. Thank you all for bringing in your expertise, your thoughts, your critical comments. So I hope we can be a community of sort of growing trust and mutual sharing. I like it a lot, and thank you especially today for Aguinaldo. So we will meet again, as always, on the first Monday. Today it's a bit tough. And then we will have our colleague Emmanuel Sulle from Tanzania, who's part of the Aga Khan University that is in Nairobi with a climate research center. And I think it will be really amazing what he's going to talk about. But in the meantime, however, I'm trying to sort of get a bit deeper into sort of the possible research topics, and the same for you, Francesca. If you find something, that would be great, and whoever is in a personal status to contribute to that or to make use of that, it would be more than welcome. So nothing more to say than thank you. Have a wonderful start of the week, start of the year, and looking forward to see you all again in latest a month.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Ciao,
Bye-bye.
ciao. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Ciao.